morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry, I played the wrong intro there, but you got the idea. Welcome to the show. Well, it is Thursday, day 501. All right, we got fives now. Day 501. There we go. There's that ticker. The gentlemen are still there, but we're coming together. We're getting messages from all over Canada. The number one message we're getting from everybody is they're still in jail. So many of those. Canadians didn't know that they're still in jail. And the number two message we're getting out there is thank you for covering it because nobody else is. Nobody. We don't even have the Western Standard, True North. We don't have Rebel. We don't have any of the mainstream. Nobody's covering it. Look, it's a pleasure to cover it, but it breaks my heart that it's left upon the people, just us. It's a good thing for us to do it. And I think this can encourage other people to do exactly that. Get out there, look at what's going on, report it, talk about it, dissent, complain, protest. These are all functions that the people are supposed to be doing in a healthy democracy. So I am privileged that we have this ability to bring this to you on this platform. But I'm sad. Like, it breaks my heart that 501 days people forgot after a couple weeks. But we didn't. Now, the third most common message I'm getting is, how can I help? Thank you, everybody. You can help by showing up, watching the show, sharing the show, bringing your stories. If you know the men, you're going to come on tomorrow. You're going to share your stories. This is how we do it. And I got to tell you, Rumble is growing like crazy. We've got several hundred views like immediately. Even Odyssey is growing like crazy. Everything's going great. And can I get Clay's message back up? Good morning, Clay, by the way. And thanks a lot for sharing that tweet this morning. And here's our coffee, buddy. Thank you for making it, Clay. Well, today's a really special day. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going inside the facilities. We have two people that know what it's like on the inside. Our very own Donald Best, as you might know, was in solitary confinement for 62 days. So he can absolutely tell you what that's like. And then Snowy, Pastor Snowy, he's the pastor for my church. He's a wonderful gentleman, very great to listen to. He actually works inside of the correctional facilities in Edmonton. So he gets to see the men, talk to the men, sit with the men, counsel the men, coach the men, guide the men. He's a wonderful gentleman. So he's going to tell us what it's like inside of the Alberta system today. And of course, Granny will be joining us at some point as well. And she's probably going to have an update or two about us, or about for us. She's in constant contact with them. And as you saw yesterday, she's spoken to all four of them now, just on Tuesday. And they're doing well. They're aware of the show, and they're very thankful that you're all coming together. So on that note, I don't want to waste any time. We've got a pastor here, and we've got Donald here. So let me go ahead and bring them both in. Hello, Donald. And hello, Pastor
Good morning.
Snowy.
Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning, Donald, and good morning, Jason, and good morning, everybody who's present.
Okay, I'm going to turn your mic up again. There you go. That may help. Thank you very much, Pastor. And yeah, we are present, and there's a lot of people out there. There's several hundred people watching this right now. And I think what we need a little bit today is a reminder that these are men. And men, when they're locked up, there's a different environment for them. Some people don't understand what that's like. And what we're trying to understand from the outside is what can happen with the men. Is there support in there for them if they're seeking it? And how does that work out? And here's Granny. Good morning, Granny.
Good morning, everyone.
And we have Pastor Snowy here, Granny. He's right above you, just like heaven.
Perfect.
So what we were just saying, Granny, is we're going to be talking a bit about what life is like on the inside. So as you know, Donald himself has been in solitary confinement, and Pastor works inside the Edmonton Correctional Facility. So he'll be able to give us a bit of the inside look and explain to us what life is like, and what services, like faith or otherwise, is available to them. So I think this would be a very enlightening episode to let people know what life is like inside for these gentlemen, because we don't get to speak to them and they can't bring that testimony to us. So I think this might be a good way to do that. And how are you doing today, Granny?
I'm doing good. Court isn't till 1:30 today, so have a couple hours to do a few things around here.
Do you want to give us an update of court yesterday?
Yes, it was extremely emotional. One of the men was his interrogation video was played, and it was sad. Let's just say the entire courtroom was in tears.
Oh my, oh
Yeah,
my.
it was pretty sad.
So we don't want to get into too much detail because there's a bit of a ban on the
Yeah,
information coming from the court, but it was an emotional one, so I
it
can
was
just
very
assume.
emotional.
Yeah, I could just assume that what that was about. Um, okay, and then so what's the plan for today? What do they plan on showing today or do today?
Honestly, don't know. It was a bit confusing at the end of the day. It was different than normal, so it'll be interesting to see what 1:30 brings. I definitely want to be there. It's not normal compared to the last 2.5 weeks. So we shall see. I'll have an update definitely for tomorrow as much as I can, but I'm just
Okay.
going to say it was different.
Okay, so there seems to be maybe more action going on, some more stuff going on.
Something to do with something that's being filed. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Well, hopefully that we're getting the word out and maybe people are taking this more seriously.
yeah.
I appreciate that, Granny. We're going to jump over to Donald because Donald. Well, first, actually, I'm going to introduce Snowy. So, Pastor Snowy, I'm about to put you on the spot, and you know what it's like to get in front and talk to people. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are and where you work?
Okay, sure. I'm Pastor Snowy, as Jason just mentioned. I actually I'm a pastor at the Breton Covenant Church, but I do have access, weekly access to the Edmonton Remand Center and also other institutions around the area. So that's my, for this particular broadcast. That's as best I can say. I've been doing pastoral work and chaplaincy work for sure for the past 26 years. 22 of those have been in the federal institutions, and the other 64 years have been in the community as a community chaplain. And it's through that ministry as a community chaplain that I've had access to the Edmonton Remand Center. And the Remand Center is an interesting place because there are people there that are charged but not sentenced. And sometimes they spend a long time. It seems to me like these gentlemen that we're talking about here have been there a very long time. And so it's in that transition, that waiting time, that we as ministers go in to try and find out how we can provide some support. And in all of the institutions, ministry can occur. And so I bring what ministry I can into a setting like that.
And I guess you can say that a remand center is kind of like purgatory. You're not sure where you are yet. Are you going to get out? Are you going to stay in? You kind of want a bit of a judgment and a decision, right?
That's correct, yeah. And I think things have changed over the period of COVID. Remand centers used to have a very, very quick turnaround. People wouldn't stay longer than, say, 3 months, except for the heavier cases, but people would come and go. So not a lot of ministry could have been established because of that, because what kind of consistency could you have? But after COVID, it seems like people stay a bit longer. And so chaplains and ministry personnel can bring something and do something a bit more with some time to it. And so there's a bit more effect that way.
Okay, so after COVID, there seems to be maybe the system's going slower, or what do you think might be the thing? Maybe there's more people, or what do you think might be slowing down the process a bit?
It's a combination of things, I think, but certainly things have definitely changed since COVID. There's not a lot of turnaround as well. So whatever the factors are, I know COVID is one of the things, because it hadn't been like this since before COVID, but now after COVID, things have slowed down. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Donald, so now what you're hearing here is your experience, which was pre-COVID, and now we also have some understanding post-COVID. So I think there's going to be a good mix of information here. So Donald, I'm going to now throw it to you. We're going to go through your story again, just the incarceration part, because that's what we're going to be focusing on today. And then we'll also ask Snowy, Pastor Snowy, if the conditions are still similar to what you went through. So we'll kind of find out how things have changed. Oh, sorry, you're muted, Donald, on your side.
Thank you.
No problem.
Pastor, I want to thank you for the work you're doing. I know that you know it's important, but as someone who has been on the other side of that cell door, and to see someone who cares for you as a person, no matter what you've done or supposed to have done, And that's another point too, and I'll get to that. But just thank you so much for your work. It's so valuable. Just your presence saves lives. It truly, truly does.
Amen.
And I don't have a lot of time in remand centers, just a little bit. I basically went straight from sentencing to prison. And because I was a former police officer, every day was spent in solitary, because it was the only place they could keep me alive. They call it segregation, but it's solitary. And it's tough. I understand, I think I've heard that some of the men are in solitary or have been for periods, and I'd love to know what that's about.
We can jump to that quickly before we continue if you'd like to know what their situation
Yeah,
is.
I'd like to know, have any of the men been in solitary? Are they in solitary? They call it segregation, but you and I both know it's solitary.
Tony and Jerry were moved from Medicine Hat in Calgary, so there's no place to put them because they're separating all of them. So Chris and Chris have two different areas in Lethbridge, and for some reason they say there's no place to put them, and I'm not necessarily thinking that's right. So they put them in two different sections of segregation from everyone. So they spend, if they're not in court, they're 22 hours a day in the cell. I think Jerry might get a little bit of cleaning time. They'll let him clean something and let him out. And then Jerry's normally he's in Calgary, something Unit 6 gang ward or something. And when there's fights break out, then they lock them all down for periods of time. So right now, because there's no place to put them while court's going on.
There you go, Donald. So just as you said, they're segregating them all.
Right. And when I went into solitary, I thought, come on, I'm a family man. I'm stable. I'm strong. I have my God. I have my prayer. It should be a piece of cake. Believe you me, it's not. When that door closed, I found myself in a cell with nothing but blood and feces and the scrawls of 20 years, 30 years on the wall. This is my story. Here I am. I think I'll kill myself. All these things written on the wall in pencil, and sometimes in blood and sometimes in feces. And that was my cell. That was every solitary cell that I had, and I had 3. Once I was in a medical containment cell, and I had to ask for a bucket to clean it up, clean the blood and everything off the floor and walls. And this was attached to the so-called hospital. And that was my cell. And it had a door. It had a little window which the guards would close. And in solitary, you have to understand, back in the 1970s, we closed down our mental institutions, our sanatoriums, our mental hospitals, whatever you want to call them. And we went to something we call community care, which is no care. And we have people now who, in the past, we would have looked after them because there's just nothing you can do. They're incapable of really being out on the street by themselves. And we used to look after them. They're mentally ill. Now they get fed into the jails, into the prisons, they're fed into the justice system, and there's no place to house them. And then they do their sentence, they get back out, and they do again. So solitary confinement at the Central East Detention Center in Lindsay, Ontario, when I was there, wow, 75% of people who were in that had serious mental problems. I listened as men ran against that cell door trying to kill themselves 1,000 times until they fell down bloodied, and then got up again when they came to and did it again. I watched people eat their own feces. So the cells have signs over them, and there's signs to instruct the guards: suicide risk, violent, biter, 3 people and supervisor to move, biter, leg irons and mouth guard, and or spitter. And these people are for the most part, sure, they're criminals. Sure, a lot of them are evil, but many of them are just plain crazy. And that's the environment, unless the pastor's going to tell me different, that's a different prison and a different system. But I think he would confirm that many of the people that we normal people are thrown into jail with or into prison with are absolutely frightening. Wouldn't be surprised to say some were actually possessed. That's the environment.
We've heard before that going into the prison or the system also changes a person. You can maybe go in there as a little criminal and come out as a big criminal. Like, it's an environment too that doesn't necessarily, help people follow the right path or a good path. So Snowy,
it breaks people down, is what it does.
Yeah. So Pastor Snowy, so Donald was in prison. What year was it?
2013, 2014.
Okay, so about 10 years ago, he was in prison in Ontario. We're going to talk a bit about the Alberta conditions, maybe the solitary conditions, and talk about maybe what Donald mentioned there and see if it's still going on.
Well, it's really sad when you even talk about the condition of the cell that you're in back in the day. That's just not, that's depressing all by itself, never mind you being in it. I've had the opportunity to be in the Edmonton Remand Center, which is a new building. So some of those things that are historic are not there, and I'm glad that that's so for the people that are currently spending time there. I've not been to the Calgary Remand or any of the southern Remand centers over there, but I can imagine that if it's not new like the Edmonton Remand Center, there'll be the stories, as you said, written on the walls, and so that's a very depressing picture. But in addition to what you said, Don, the presence of many people having mental health challenges is very, very real. They definitely are. That seems to be our next sanatorium, is our prisons. They spend some time in there. There's not a lot of help that they do get because there's too many of them, and each of the institutions that are there are designed for people that are functioning. And then when you add to that people that have got lower functioning, it stresses the system. And so therefore, when they're in there, whatever help comes, and I think the spiritual help that is brought in by people from faith traditions, that certainly is very, very good, because you can be personally present there. You don't have to say anything. The fact that you show up and you're different than what they're accustomed to, that's just great. And then, of course, if you're bringing a word of hope or encouragement, that makes a whole lot more difference for them.
And have you worked with people who have 22 hours of solitary confinement and then 2 hours out? And if so, what does that day look like for them? And what kind of touch points do you have?
I've not had the opportunity in these recent years to work with people who are in that state, because I'm not employed by the Solicitor General. I'm a volunteer going into those centers. But when I listen to the chaplains that are present in those places, they do have access to them in that time. But of course, if you're spending that much time in isolation, it's hard. It is tough. It's almost inhuman, one would say, because being separated from society, that's how Canada does its corrections. We take you out of society because you're a danger to them, and we're gonna give you some respite, some time away. The original word penitentiary meant that. We took people out of community and set them aside so they can think about the things that they've done. And then once they've had enough time of thinking and they have chaplaincy presence, and perhaps counselors or whatever it is, whatever time they spent would have been to instruct them to do things differently and then return. But penitentiary meant to be penitent, and think about things. But we tend to now use that same term in a punitive way. And that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, because the punishment is the process now. Like, you're punished before you're even tried or sentenced. And that is a punishment. Not being able to be with your family, being locked away 22 hours, waiting for even trial dates to happen. So what do you think about that? Because you're right. This used to be a system for the guilty to think about what they did, to repent. But now the system's punishing you even before that stage. Does that break your heart? And did you see that happen over time, or has that always kind of been the way it was in Canada?
I think that, let's say the governing philosophy is remove them from society. But when you get them into different institutions, whether they be provincial institutions or federal institutions, it's the kind of, it's the programming, the presence of the staff and the personnel that are there, that it could actually make it a productive time, or it could be a draining time, a time of oppression and depression. So every institution has got people who are there to help, and there are people that are there to drain you. And that's just the nature of even societies like that. Not everybody wants to give everybody a good shout to be successful. And if you concentrate that in a small area, in an institutional setting, that becomes more telling, because you have no power when you are in a cell. You have nothing. So you have to be subjected to whatever is coming your way.
And people like you come in and you bring compassion and love with you.
Yeah.
But the guards and the people that are in the system, they got to be tougher people. They got to be rugged people. They got to be able to put up with stuff, because they're spitters and biters and other things that we just heard. So do you see that as well? What kind of humanitarian level do the people in there, other than the faith people, provide? Is it I can't imagine it's a source of comfort at all. And it might even be a source of intimidation and fear.
You know, all officers that work in these correctional facilities have been trained. They've been trained to be able to not combat, but to have a proper defense against the kinds of things that would come from some of these people that are incarcerated. So the training is there. What sets everybody apart is their own sense of personality. Why it is they're there. What brought them into that system. They are very good officers who actually have got a sense of compassion, and they sign up to be part of the system to help correct people. And then there's some officers who perhaps they wear their own grudges, and they bring that with them. And if somebody in their world, the people that they know, were affected by a particular crime, then those kinds of perpetrators as well seem to be targeted by them. I'm speaking very generally. I won't sort of say I know 7 guys that do this. That is what you find in correctional systems.
So it sounds like there's a mix of society in there. So you have some people that are in there because they want to be there and help, and you got some people in there because it's a job. You got some people in there because maybe they enjoy the power. So it's going to be a mix of society within the staff there.
Yeah,
yeah.
It is a mix. Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, I guess you could expect that. It is society that works there. So Granny, I'm going to turn to you. So you've heard a little bit from Donald about his conditions, and you've learned a little bit about Edmonton's conditions. Can you kind of just explain to us a little bit about the conditions that the men are in that they've reported to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So Medicine Hat seems to have the best conditions, food-wise and just conditions, but there's no hobby room or craft room or anything to do. And that's where Tony ended up. And he writes letters nonstop. That's all he's got is his Bible and his pen. And then Jerry ended up in the Calgary Remand, which I think it was called Ward 6, some kind of gang unit or something. He's seen a lot. Now Jerry left Calgary Remand and went to Lethbridge for the court. And he said the food is crazy good compared to Calgary. But then you talk to Chris and Tony, and they're going, oh my God, the food here in Lethbridge is ugh. So that makes you wonder. And the bag lunches the guys have been getting at the courthouse is supposed to be coming from the Remand, I think, and it's been disgusting. We think possibly one of the men might have had food poisoning on Friday. The lunches on Monday were still bad, Tuesday still bad. So he took the lettuce out, showed his lawyer. The lettuce had black spots on it. And this is the young man that had food poisoning, we think. The lawyer lost it. The next day, still bad food, moldy orange. And then the next day, yesterday, the first time in 2.5 weeks, they had sandwiches made the same day. It's been bad, and I don't know who's supposed to oversee this. Who is supposed to be held accountable? Like, food should be, it's part of life. You got to have food, but these men are saying it's not good.
Look, like we understand that the Remand Center is not supposed to be a playground. It's not supposed to be fun. We're not going to be handing out steaks and lobster. We all get that. But there are still humans, basic nutritional needs, and you have health that you have to consider here. Now, one of the things that we've kind of been talking about here so far is how the accused are treated. But Donald, I want to turn to you because we heard your story, but the difference with you is you were falsely accused. You actually had corruption against you. You were an innocent man sitting in that jail, in that prison. So I can imagine, as all of us can, that would be a much different mindset to somebody who knows they did that and they got caught. It'd be a much different mindset. So let's talk a bit, Donald, about being innocent, being in there, and then on day 62, coming out and knowing that you're going to be free. And did you know, by the way, did you know that day was coming, or was it just something that happened that day and then you were freed? So I want to know whether or not you were counting the hours to freedom.
Eventually I could, but one of the parts of my story is a corrupt judge. After my sentencing hearing, my trial, so-called trial, where no lawyer would defend me, I had to defend myself. I was sentenced, I was taken downstairs, and then that judge went to a back room and he wrote another warrant for my arrest that doubled my sentence. Didn't tell me, didn't file it with the court itself, made no notations in the judge's notes, sent the one and only copy to the prison that doubled the sentence that was on the record. Can you imagine that? How corrupt that? But what he was trying to do was to stop me from getting out until my appeal period was over.
So he's trying to hold you during that. Okay, sorry.
Right. I mean, he was corrupt. This is all, and you don't have to believe me. Once again, all the documents, the affidavits swearing to just that from the Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, Julian Fantino, that's all on my website. So what I'm saying here is quite vetted and true. So that judge was corrupt, and he did that. He did that to save his friends, the lawyers who had lied on the record. And I had the recording, you know the story. I won't go into it now, but the bottom line is I arrived at prison, and the warden and the management came over to me and they said, "What did you do? Why would you upset the judge like that?" That's the first I heard that my sentence had been doubled. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I found a lawyer who would take my case. Somebody found from outside for me. And so the sentence got cut back to 63 days, and I served 63 days. I was innocent, but I knew the reason why I was in there. It was the system protecting itself. So I had a different mindset. Even then, it's tough. You get feeling sorry for yourself. Of course you do. And, you know, these gentlemen, the Coutts Four, as I've said, I believe they're being held as a political act, a political decision. We've got a cop killer out on the street in Toronto on bail now. And we have multiple arsonists out on the street. And we have attempted murder suspects out on the street. And some of them have ankle bracelets. Some of them have to stay at home. Some of them can go to work. But these Coutts Four are in prison. And in the context of everything, that makes them political prisoners in my mind. Now, are they innocent? Are they guilty? I don't know. Yeah. I think we have to see we have to see the evidence. Let's see the evidence. But once again, we see what's happening here. We're going to tackle an allegation of the RCMP planted evidence. We're going to tackle that subject next week on this show.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are in their minds, and I've read a letter from one of them, Chris, I think. They are in their minds innocent. And they know they're political prisoners. No one's told me that, but they have to know. These are normal Canadians, intelligent people. They have to know they're political prisoners. As to what that does to them, I don't know. But I know that many of the people that I met in prison were eventually found innocent, not guilty. And I don't mean some technical thing, let them off the charge. They were found not guilty. They were innocent. And we have to realize, especially in the remand centers, we have a high percentage of people who are innocent, who will be found innocent, but for whatever reason, they're there and they're being held. And that makes for a mindset that I'd like to hear more about. Perhaps a pastor can give us some idea of that mindset, and also grandma too, because you know these men the best.
Yeah. So what I want to kind of say here is we all have faith when we're innocent people outside the system. We're not part of the system. We all have faith that the system will work well. So if you're picked up and somebody's accused you of something and you know you're innocent, you have this immediate default assumption that, oh, don't worry, they can't convict me because I'm innocent. There's not going to be evidence. There's not going to be any way to get me more in trouble. I'll be completely cleared right away. We heard this from Jeremy McKenzie. So when he got picked up as part of the POEC, because he was accused of being a leader of a terrorist group in Canada, which, by the way, he's not, Pastor Snowy. But when he was picked up, his first thought was, well, this is just a mistake. They just don't understand. We're going to completely clear this up within hours because I'm not what they're saying I am. And then they locked him up and kept him in there, denied him access to justice. And at one point, he realized, oh, this is a different game. This isn't what I thought it was. This isn't innocent until proven guilty. This is guilty till proven innocent. So his mindset about the system changed. I can imagine the exact same thing happened to this gentleman. So I'm going to go to Granny quickly, and then I'll go over to Pastor Snowy. So Granny, when they went in there, I assume that they thought, this is just a horrible mistake. We'll clear this up. And then at some point, they're realizing, this is going to be a while. Did you have a conversation with them around that? Did they kind of express that with you?
Well, from what I've learned, when they were at Coutts, everybody was told by Rebel media that the lawyers would cover all costs for lawyers, and basically it was mischief that was talked about. Nobody saw something like this coming. So when the guys went in, they were initially just charged with mischief. It changed. I don't know when, within the next day, within the next 2 days, it changed to the conspiracy to murder RCMP officers. And like one of them was literally walking down the hallway to the interrogation room, and he got told his charges and read his rights right outside of the door as he was going in. So yeah, their mindset was very confused. And again, I need to explain. Jerry is separate. Chris and Chris are best friends, and Tony is separate. So they kind of know each other, maybe through a rally or something, or a prepping class, but they really didn't know each other. Chris and Chris are best friends since high school. So that kind of makes a strange scenario all on its own right there. So yes, when they got charged, they were very confused. Like, what is going on? And again, there's many details I can't explain. The truth is there, but the truth has to be told by the foreman. Yes,
for sure. Okay, so Snowy, wait, one more question to Granny. Before they went in, 3 of them had never been charged with anything before, and I think there was one that had some minor charges before.
I think one has a like a juvenile record or something like that, outside of maybe a speeding ticket or something. And again, I don't know the background of the men very well. I talk to them all the time, but I don't really go into their personal past. Again, that's for them to share.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to help raise awareness. I say innocent until proven guilty. I'm finding out, like you said, it's presumed guilty and sentence, and then you've got to figure out how you're going to get out of it. And I'm fundraising for them. So when I talk to them, I try to talk to them about their something other than what's going on for their mental health.
Mhm.
It's more about mental health with me right now, but that's pretty much all I know. Well, I did find out Chris Lysick does have a speeding ticket.
Hmm.
Oh, I hear you don't have any speed. Oh no, that's not me. He says, I've had speeding tickets, but this guy has never been in trouble in a day in his life. And when he went in, he actually had to phone the lawyer, like after everything was said and done, and he had to phone the lawyer that he had, and he had to say, I don't know how to do this. Do I call you or do you call me? Like, how do we do this? He had no clue how to do anything.
Wow. So, Pastor, I'm going to come to you next. So, just so you know, there was 14 people picked up on the same day. 4 of them ended up getting additional charges, like we just heard. Those 4 men, 3 of them, no real interaction with the legal system at all prior to that. 1 man, very minor, possibly juvenile. Again, long gone. They were out free. There was no parole or anything going on like that. So, for these gentlemen, they were picked up on mischief charges and then changed to a much, much more serious charge. Now, what I'm trying to highlight with you is there's supposed to be a presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And we're not really seeing that here, especially after 501 days, still no bail, still no trial. So I want to kind of now throw it to you by explaining to people, if you've spoken to people who have turned out to be innocent and what their kind of life was like and how that's a little bit different from people who, they know what they did.
I think you've summarized it well. There's a natural expectation for the system to serve you well, because if you're innocent, they'll soon find it out and you get out. And if you wait for trial, then you'll just wait in the community on bail, because that's how we've understood the system to work. But sadly, it sounds like in the case of these men that that's not been proven to be so. And I've met people in the remand center who have been picked up on a charge and are placed in a cell at the remand center, and they're saying, I don't even know why I'm here. And you say, well, look, talk to a lawyer, let the lawyer get you before a judge, and then apply for bail. There's a fellow who's been there since the beginning of May. He's only going up for his bail hearing next week, because his initial hearing, they said that we think you're a danger, so we're not going to let you go. That's just a thought. I don't know how people can allow the subjectivity to be present in a system, in the legal system, because the law itself is plain and clear. And if everybody serves the law, then everybody would actually be treated in the same way. But when you have people with subjective opinions and differences of opinion, and even let's say a person is in the community, there are several things that they'll be subjected to before they get into incarceration. There'll be the person that accuses them, who brings them before the law enforcement. The law enforcement will grab a hold of them, arrest them, read them their rights, and bring them before a magistrate, so that they can actually let them know what the charges are, and then they'll sit in the institution. Now in the institution, they are mixing together with people who are probably criminals, who are going through probably a third or a fourth time of incarceration, and they know why they're there. And here's a person that has no idea why they're there. So the mindset that sits on these folks is one of confusion for sure, and then self-doubt. And you start to judge yourself by the most negative things that you've done, instead of looking forward to the things that have worked for you, the positive, the things that have always been good, your community connections. People tend to sit in this dark place, and that's their frame of reference. So sometimes, because of the experience I've had in corrections, I know that sometimes that mind is present. And I try to bring to them this idea that please don't judge yourself by your worst act, because you're better than that. And so therefore, the time will come when your voice will be heard. And remember, you have to stick to the things that are working for you rather than that which has condemned you.
Oh, wow. Yes, absolutely. And Donald, when you were in, did you have faith with you as well? Is that something that you leaned on, or is that something maybe you picked up later? I would like to understand how faith may have played a role in your stay.
I'm a Christian. I am dependent upon Jesus. I pray. That's my faith. And yes, but let me tell you, everything's fine till they slam that door. And then your faith is tested. And, you know, poor me. Look, I knew I was being railroaded. I knew the evidence was phony. I thought I would be able to prove it with the recordings that I had of the phone calls that proved everything, but they didn't let that into court because so the system was totally corrupt. The legal system was corrupt. The judge was corrupt. The Law Society of Ontario was corrupt. And I've had apologies from each one of those institutions, by the way. But that doesn't matter. You're in this cell. You have a concrete bed, which mine was concrete. You have a sink to wash your hands attached to a toilet. And there's no privacy, none at all. In my case, the lights were on 24 hours a day. I wanted to ask the pastor about that. When they were in solitary or segregation, do they still keep the lights on 24 hours a day? I had heard there was a court case in British Columbia where they had to stop that. But it's torture. It is absolute torture. And you know, to be in with the general population, you got to watch your back, because there are people in there who are dangerous, who will try and gather information about you and where your family is, your home, to pass on to friends on the outside. Let's not forget that, you know, if half of the people are innocent or first time they did something that they regret, there's a very dark half of the prison. The inmates, and they're professional criminals, and there'll probably never be anything else. I would imagine Pastor might know about that too.
Yeah, that's true, because there's a culture inside as well. There's a society inside as well. There's friendships, there's enemies, there's this whole thing that goes on inside as well. And if you're not, you know, a seasoned anything, and you're not a street criminal, and this isn't your lifestyle, that would be a big culture shock as well. So yeah, I'm going to go to you, Pastor Snowy, and maybe you can answer Donald's first question there of whether or not they still keep lights on, and then maybe talk about how there is a society in there that you also have to try and fit into if you're even part of that population.
Yeah, let me see if I can answer the first question. I'm not so sure. I've not yet the Edmonton Remand Center. There doesn't seem to be like what you would call segregation. They have pods that are but most restricted, and people are assigned to a cell in each of those pods. But I do not think that it's the kind of thing that you've shared. That's terrible. The experience that people like that enter into that environment are subjected to. Let me talk about the different cultures and the communities that exist in these places. Innocent people will rub shoulders with very, very guilty people. And then there's a hierarchical structure that naturally falls into place there, because the heavies, people would call them that, the people who have reputation, tend to look for vulnerable people through which they can either intimidate for canteen or anything that they can have that'll make their own lives better. But because they know these folks are just new here, they'll take advantage of them. And so the person that's there for the very first time doesn't know that these things go on. And then there are well-meaning people will say to them, don't ever get yourself into debt, a canteen debt. Don't do any of these things. Of course, you have no idea why they're saying this. But if you stay there long enough, you'll begin to realize that there is a system, a hierarchical system, a structure that's in place that you have to do something to sustain yourself, whether it's to abide by those expectations or withdraw and just take whatever comes your way, whatever the consequences, you have to do that. And so thankfully, there's not like just one innocent person amongst, say, 70 guilty guys or people who are criminals. There's a number of people that are still on charge that have not been gone to trial. So they get together and they form a support for each other. they do that because community does occur. You're able to talk to somebody in a general gathering about things that you're processing and what have you. So in spite of the fact that there are people like me who are coming from the outside, there's still some people inside that can have some common conversations that make life a little bit better. It's not the same as being out there with your family, but at least providentially, this is provided to people like that. But there is a hierarchical structure for people who can intimidate, people who are bullies, people who just take advantage of. They exist, and they're there together with the people that have yet to be proven guilty.
Oh yeah, so for sure. So, but even in this case, they're looking at a lot more segregation. So they don't even get to make the connections, the human connections to people around them. Criminals are not, sometimes just saying, "Hey, how are you doing?" is enough to lift a spirit, and they're not really getting that. Now, Granny, they are doing, or they're at least saying they're doing that to protect the men, to keep them from talking and working together, and to possibly keep them from additional crimes against them inside. Because I can imagine that they would become a target of people that would want to maybe try and get information out of them and trade it for a lower sentence for them, or they would be kind of targeting for the purpose of their own benefit in some way, shape, or form. I can imagine that would happen as well. Now they're being segregated, so I don't really want to get into any of their individual instances that happen, but does some of this kind of ring true with the things you're talking about, that they're not sure who they can trust inside the guards and inside the population as well, and that segregation, even though it's bad for their mental health, do you think it really is necessary for their physical health and physical safety?
They've typically only been segregated in Lethbridge. You've got to remember, Tony is from Medicine Hat Remand, Jerry's from Calgary Remand, and Chris in Lethbridge. So they're out in the public, or whatever you call it, the community. They're out doing their thing. Jerry gets locked down when there's fights because his is a rougher area. But typically they're out. And Chris Carbert has a Bible study going since he got in there. So he's part of that community. And he's done a lot of good for the Lethbridge Remand Center. Him and I discussed that last night. I said, you've touched so many lives with a positive outcome for the men. And I'm sure they'll speak of you for many years. So they seem to be doing okay. They've had a little bit of trouble with some of the guards. Like an example, they get their rooms. Chris Lysick said they get their rooms tossed every month. I guess it's a thing they do. And he had just gotten supper, and he made himself a taco in a bag. He took his hamburger, he bought some tacos from the canteen, his salad, and he made himself a treat. They came in and tossed the room, and they had the dogs. And so Chris says, my supper is up on the ledge there. Just please be careful. And the guard walks over and grabs it and looks at him and puts it in the garbage. So stuff like that happens. But overall, it's been pretty good. I haven't heard of anything too bad. There's been a little bit, but not too bad. They said overall the guards have been pretty decent. And as time has gone on, the guards are now saying to them, you guys don't belong in here. The sheriffs are saying you don't belong in here while they're being transported. Like the inmates are saying, you guys don't belong in here, but they're in there.
Yeah. And we heard that from you, that there's even been repeat offenders that would come back and say, hey, what are you guys still doing here? So these repeat offenders went through bail, went through the system, got out, offended again, came back in, and they're like, hey, you're still here. You mentioned that a couple of times, that that's been happening.
Yeah, the repeat offenders came in and they said, oh, just call this one lawyer, which one of them did have once upon a time. And you just got to pay him $5,000. You'll be out in no time. No worries. They come back in. They're still there. And it's like, so they're going like, why are you still in here? And the lawyer story, once we get through what we're going through, that's the lawyer story alone is a story. And it needs to be dealt with. Because I think some of the criminals in this scenario are the lawyers, and their actions need to be accounted for. But some of them, they're too scared to do anything right now because they're in the inside. But when they get out, it needs to be dealt with.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just kind of burst your bubble a bit. Holding lawyers accountable is very difficult because they are judged and managed by additional lawyers. And it's the same club. So they're all in the same club. So the Law Society itself is it's a self-governing profession like other ones. So colleagues, people you went to school with, these are the same people that are coming after you and doing things. I personally have filed complaints against one lawyer in Ontario. She was totally guilty on the bad things she did. But yeah, it's been 4 years now, and they're still slowly moving that along. I don't think you're going to get justice with the lawyers inside of the Law Society, but
Should
you
be
will
more,
get
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but
The
you'll get
money
justice
part.
for sure. But you'll get
Yeah.
justice outside. People will stop hiring them, so these lawyers are going to have to deal with the market backlash when people understand who they
Exactly.
are.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Tony and Chris C. So Chris C. started a Bible group, and Tony carries his Bible and pen around. And I'm sure Jerry and Chris have some sort of faith of their own that they stick to. I'm sure everybody prays a bit. So Donald, I'm going to go to you, and then we're going to kind of get close to wrapping up with Pastor Snowy. So when you were in there, Donald, you were totally segregated, total. So you didn't get into the society within the prison itself. Now, in your case, you're an ex-police officer, so you probably shouldn't be part of that. What do you think about for these gentlemen? They are accused of some of the most heinous crimes, not against children or anything like that, but against the country. They're being accused of being like terrorists against the country. Do you think that they would be accepted in the community? Do you think that they would be rejected? And what do you think their life might be like on the charges that they have?
Okay, well, first of all, there is a hierarchy, and believe it or not, top killers are at the top. Pastor shaking his head, yeah, they're the famous ones. They're the higher. So some people might mistakenly believe that they are pretty bad people, but I think as we just heard from Granny, which is probably exactly what's happening. I doesn't surprise me at all. Eventually, people realize that they don't belong there. Certainly not for 500 days before they even get a trial. And I think that I would hope that being just decent, normal guys as they appear to be, that people around them would recognize it, especially the career criminals and the cards too. I would think. I hope that's the case. It wasn't the case in my situation. From the moment I went to the cells, from the courtroom to the cells downstairs, which were full, Oshawa Court, it was known that I was an ex-police officer, and well, I got threats verbally and sign language all the way up to prison. They had to segregate me in the prison van as if I were a child molester or something, because I just wouldn't survive in the general community.
Wow. Okay, so that's deep. Now, I'm going to kind of go back to Snowy on this one. So we've been talking about the men, we've been talking about the inside, we've been talking about the community, we've been talking about the guards. We're hearing stories that even repeat offenders are saying, what are you guys doing here? Guards, sheriffs are saying, what are you doing here? But we forgot one big piece. 3 of these men are fathers. There's 7 children who missed 2 Father's Days now, all their birthdays, Christmas, they're going to miss another one. That's got to be a burden on the men. They can't be with their children. And that's got to be a burden on the family itself outside. They can't be with their father. So can you maybe talk about how families have to use faith or stick together to get through this difficult part as well? Because, yeah, we're focused on the men and the injustice happening to them, but the punishment is extended to their family every single day as well. So there's 7 children who have done 501 days in prison with these gentlemen. And that's breaking my heart as well. Have you spoken to men about that? And what is it like for a father knowing that their children are outside and they can't see them?
Even what they feel free to share with you, that they're holding back the pain and the difficulty that they continually exist with is extraordinarily difficult. If you know you've done something wrong and you can at least communicate that to your family and say, look, I'm going to pay for whatever it is so I'll see you when I get out. That's one thing. But if you know you've done nothing wrong, and then the separation that's occurring, that is too heavy a burden, and that's for the men that are inside. That's tough for them. The families also feel a similar thing because there's a severance, a cut, a disconnect, and then there are so many barriers for you to get back in touch with him, because it's just, you don't just pick up a phone and phone him and wait for his phone to ring at his desk. You got to wait for him to contact you, and you don't know what mechanisms are in place for him to be able to do that, because if it's your first time in incarceration, you have no idea how to even use the phone, and if you're allowed to, or if you have got to wait in line for so and so. There's all of these things that are there. So for the families, I'm glad that there are people that can come alongside these families to at least surround them with the presence of love and compassion and all of that. The only thing they can't bring is the physical presence of their loved one. They can't do that. But they can do the next best thing, is to say, I am in touch with your father, your brother, your husband. And from what I can hear, this is what they're doing. Some positive news helps a family get by. No news is terrible. Even news about, well, there was a scuffle on his unit and he's had to be in isolation, but he's okay. That news is news. They can see something's going on, but to hear nothing is a terrible thing. So that's what I would advise people who are coming alongside of that family. Thank you for being present to them. Thank you for letting them know that it is hard. It's extraordinarily hard. In all of the criminal justice system, yes, there are victims of crime, but also the family are secondary victims to the separation. And who deals with them? Because at the other end of it, when they come out of jail, from incarceration, how do you bring these families together? Because so much has gone by, so much has changed inside of them, and you've got to find ways to negotiate that. So there's a tough time for re-entry as well.
Yeah, so the family is very important here, Granny, and we've extended the invite to family to come and join us tomorrow, and some friends as well. I think that will help. I hope the men at some point will be able to see that video and hear from their friends and family a little bit more direct, get to see them. You see their eyes blinking and everything. That would be great. Can you maybe let everybody know maybe who's coming and what we can expect with tomorrow?
Well, I asked Chris Carbert's mother to come on tomorrow. Chris Carbert has lost a lot. His family has changed forever. While he's been in jail, he's lost his dad and a brother, and was not able to go to the funerals, was not there to be there for his mom. He's lost so many in the last year and a half, like aunts and uncles, and his whole dynamics of his family has changed. It'll never be the same for him to come out. So Betty's going to come on tomorrow, and I'll also, I'll talk to Jacqueline. Jacqueline and Jerry are not allowed to visit each other. They're husband and wife. And when she went to find Jerry at the jail, they charged her at the same time. So the remand is keeping them apart. The judge said he would not keep them apart, but the remand says she can't come in. So wow. She was able to see him in Lethbridge. She got into the courtroom just so she could see him and he could see her. And then now she can't go into the courtroom no more. So, but at least they saw each other a little bit.
Wow, I'm so sorry to hear that they're keeping husband and wife apart, and they're using the system in a weird way to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Snowy, I'm going to pass it to you, and maybe you can lead us in a prayer for these men. It's Jerry, Tony, Chris and their family. Let's go ahead and have you lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we come before you with hearts of expectation, heavy hearts, because we know of the loss and the disconnection that has occurred between these men and their families. We know that you're the one that actually rules in the hearts of men. You actually are allowing all these things to take place, and you've got a reason for that. Our prayer, dear Lord, is that true justice is served here, that each of these men has the opportunity to get time out into the community until their trial comes, whenever that is. But Lord, I pray that you would prevail upon all decision makers, even right now, whatever personal feelings they have, may the consciousness of the true intent of the law sit on them. so that they can make decisions that are appropriate for them, so that true justice can be carried out. Then we pray for the families who are on the other side, missing, hoping, waiting. And of course, it's not the same. I pray for each of these gentlemen's families, Jerry, Chris, and Tony, for the people that they're connected with, the people that matter to them. Somehow, through your spirit, may there just be a sense of peace that they can, if they leave things in God's hands, that God will bring a proper conclusion to all this. I thank you for Granny, who's present here, who is an abundant presence to each of these people. Bless her. Bless the community that she serves. For Don, thank you for bringing him through the ordeal that he has, but he has a voice now that can speak against these things. And I thank you for Jason, who brings all these things to light, so that there is a platform for people to have access to share some of the frustrations, but also to be informed about what is there. So for all of us, we give you thanks that you've given us this opportunity to converse about this. But we know, Lord, that you have a hand in this, and you will bring justice to bear. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Granny. Thank you, Don. God bless you, Jerry. God bless you, Tony. God bless you, Chris. And God bless you, Chris. Keep up that Bible study. Keep up those letter writing. And one more plea to everybody that's watching. Send your letters. Go ahead and send a letter. Just say, God bless. I love you. We miss you. We'll see you soon. We're there for you. We're standing with you. Just say hello. I appreciate that. So thank you all very much. And God bless.
Bless you too. Thanks for inviting me on. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Well, folks, that's it. God is good. God is great. The men are going to feel this. We're going to send all our prayers. We're going to make sure that they understand they're not forgotten. And I think they're starting to hear that. And I think it might be helping. Thank you all very much for being here. I appreciate it. I think Pastor Snowy was a wonderful addition today. We got to hear about life inside an Alberta Remand Center and how it is different. And we also got to hear the testimony from the men through Granny. She's quite the disciple. She is quite the advocate. I love her. And I hope you guys all support her as well. Go on that Facebook page, show your love and support there. Thank you all very much. I love you all. And remember, God bless.